So good evening, everyone. I am so delighted to have you all with us, but more excited and honored to share this space, even virtually, with our prolific guest, Mr. Saifullah Alwani. Good evening, sir. Um,
Good evening.
Good evening. And on becoming a writer, what an amazing topic to broach for young aspirational writers who want to become fulfilled writers and wonder. And before diving in, allow me to give a brief presentation about Mr. Saifullah Alwani for the ones who don't know him. So Mr. Saifullah Alwani, professor, writer, trilingual speaker and lecturer, ardently passionate about humans, about knowledge and wisdom. He's got a particular passion for transdisciplinarity, philosophy of science, complex thinking, sociology, psychology, and history. A true Peter Pan intellectual, he describes himself. His endeavor primarily consists in combining the rigor of science, the beauty of art, and the profundity of psychology in order to serve his intellectual project entitled The Engineering of Human Flourishing through an institute that he founded years ago called Human Flourishing Engineering Institute, where he introduces the approaches he conceived as the approach IBA and the approach Upwise. Saifullah Alwani is a professor, researcher at University Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah, where he teaches management at University of Fez. He's also active and present in work, present in the public bodies in Morocco and in the MENA region, where he broaches subjects that are related to the power of wisdom and well-being. I can also say that he's a consultant, a coach, an international speaker and lecturer, and also, and most importantly for the topic of tonight, a writer. You know, he's an unstoppable writer who writes in three languages, and in English, Arabic, French, and allow me to cite his books. Most recently, he wrote in English, You Should Not Languish, an anti-guide to wisdom and well-being. En français, Des Thésards des Vrais, وباللغة العربية حوار مع صديق مسلم وبطولة العالم الآخرون. What a career that is. You cannot ask for more than that. And we're so honored to have him tonight and to broach the topic of on becoming a writer, which is, as I said before, is an amazing topic to broach. And when I was digging up, trying to find the right questions to ask for tonight's topic, and I was like visiting all these great writers who have spoken about the topic, contemporary ones and the dead ones. James Joyce, for example, he's one of the most prolific writers in the world, and he stated before in a book he wrote that the formula of being a great writer is silence, exile, and cunning. And maybe more recently, Toni Morrison and Stephen King and J.K. Rowling, the ones who have more of convergent ideas about what it's like to be a good writer, and they all agree, they have this common ground, which is a good writer is primarily a good reader. So I wonder, Mr. Saifullah Alwani, how do you approach this, and what are the other characteristics and features of a good writer?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hussein. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه إخواني وحزبي. Thank you for having me, and I'm very delighted to be part of this wonderful and ambitious initiative. Although I feel a little bit embarrassed to be considered as a as a writer, as I see myself, I'm nothing close to being an accomplished and well-known writer. So I'm a budding writer. I'm a writing larva, if you can see. So somehow I am just experiencing the process of becoming a writer. This is why I choose the topic as becoming a writer. So although I can recognize that I have this unshakable passion for reading, for writing, for all works of words or crafting of words, all related disciplines. And as you ask me later about the topic of this intervention and what makes good writers and why we write, I can anticipate into this question and say that good writers don't necessarily make good speakers. And that released me from the stress of wanting to be good enough, and showing that writing in English can be equivalent of speaking in English. So you can expect from me to write correctly in English, but not to speak correctly in English. So lower expectation. I am not that great. Now, let me start my speech by sharing with you my deepest belief about this concern. I think that for the question why we write, every writer have a single answer, given his idiosyncratic life path, given his own personal experience and what we have been through during his own life and the ebbs and flows of his personal experience. So why write? Why do this thing that Hemingway famously said is easy? All what you had to do is to sit in your typewriter and bleed. So for me, the story has begun 40 years ago, when I was 5 years old. For reasons no one could understand in my family, I brought home a big chunk of shredded paper with musty smell. You know that's rotten paper. I found it trash. I found somehow in neighborhood. It was a legal encyclopedia, a great bulk of paper with red ink and very bleak. There is nothing compelling in it, especially for a 5 years old kid. So I bought this item home, and it's one of my weird features as a weird kid. My mom has been used to see me bring some oddities like cats, stray dogs, and dead birds, and any kind of horrible things. And this time I brought this book, and I tried to read it. I kept it in my bed. I kept it with me. I tried to read what it was like. There is no image, no colors, no pictures inside. And I tried to experience the smell of this book, to experience this encounter with paper, with ink, and something compelled me to take this weird item as a pet. And when I took it in my hand, and I remember this, when I put it in my lap, it felt like every cell in my body, settled into place. Of course, I was too young to articulate what my intention, but it was my way to announce what will go down as the modus operandi of my life, that I want to live inside and with books. And that was my big decision taken at very early age. And, unfortunately, my working class family did not have books in the house. And we have some old magazines, some old newspapers, especially mainly used for cleaning reasons, and no serious book inside the house. And no one was reading, of course, inside my house. So we have some stories, and I managed to read some shred of paper, some piece of papers, etc., to get interested in some pictures and photos. But fortunately for me, I have another thing to fill my curiosity, to keep my unsettling mind alive. It was a human being. It was my grandma, my beloved grandma. I don't know if the word beloved can make justice of what she had meant, and what she still means for me, because she was my my dad, she was my hero, my Wonder Woman. I believe I remember I never seen her afraid of anything. She was my world, my everything. And besides all her qualities, she had an exquisite sense of storytelling. She can make a story of everything, of nothing. Out of nothing, she can make a story. And I used to share the same room and sometimes the same bed with her. And during the cold winter nights, she took me in her bed, and she, I still remember this smell, this smell of the warmness, this smell of cinnamon, flour, wool, and all that. I'm summoning up all those deep memories from my heart. And she told me stories about the ancient world, stories about prophets, stories about legends, stories about everything. She created story, and the flow never ceased coming from her mouth. And I grew up delighted with her stories. And meanwhile, I modeled a lot of her techniques, strategies of crafting a good story, how to build a character, how to create tension, how to make sure that your story is at a climax, and to build a plot and the morality. And we didn't have a TV, but wasn't necessary. I had my grandma, and it was far enough for me. One day, when I was a teenager, Mr. Mackier, I still remember his name, a noble man. I was subjugated by his presence and character. He was my professor, and he looked at my age, and told me, son, you should consider, as he hands me back my Arabic essay, he told me, you should consider being a writer one day. You would make a good writer. And for reasons, that was a prophecy. And for reason I still don't understand, I pronounced the most valuable sentence I have pronounced during my whole life, because it's a life-changing situation. I told him, Mr. Mackier, can you please help me to get more books to read? And he was delighted to shower me with books. He has a lot. It happens that he has a big library, and he used to come with piles of books. He gave them to me, and I sucked my mind, sucked up my mind within those words, the world of books, literature. It was mainly Arabic. It was essentially and exclusively Arabic. So I read about literature, the classics, the history, a lot of topics. And meanwhile, the more I read, the more I get empowered. I feel like different from others. I know more things. I can harness the power of knowledge. I can harness this power of knowing things. And this knowledge gives me a sense of self-esteem, a sense of pride, a sense of having something to say about something. It looks like a nerd sometimes, looks like a weird character, but it works, dude. It works the downside. So that was the first encounter between me and the world of books, the world of knowledge. Reading is a way to master the world. Reading is a way to understand the world. And you know why? Even in my late 18s, I was still sharing the same room with my grandma, still delighted with her stories. Even I came to know all of them, and they were redundant. And I have the pleasure to listen to them again and again and again. One night, I remember,
she started to tell me a whole new story, never told before. It's about her youth, her childhood, and her dreams. And because I was very sleepy, I told her to postpone the ending for the day before. The next day, we were alone, her and me in the house, in her home, and she suddenly got a heart attack, and died. Yeah,
This is quite tragic. Like that, to start.
yeah, and died. And you know, it was my first encounter with death. My big grandma, my beloved grandma, my everything, let me down. She left me alone. I remember coming back from the funeral and going to bed this night. You can imagine, and thinking how audacious the sun could rise the next day. Who needs the sun? Who needs the sun? Because my world has collapsed. I was devastated. And everything was reminding me of her. My very existence was reminding me of her. And I spent few months in a dull and very difficult situation. And one night I decided to do a thing. I took my pen and I started writing. And out of despair, I took the pen and started to write another version of her life. I wrote about her. And I tried to imagine different endings, different twists, different version of her life. And I imagine what makes me a little very, very broken about her is that she passed away before I can do anything good for her. I was too young to do something good or to give her back part of her deeds and good deeds with me. That was heartbreaking for me, and that was my way to give a tribute for her. I wrote this, and I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up, and the world wasn't the same. It seems like something has shifted. I'm healed from my grief. I got healed from my grief. I looked to the world with different eyes. It was one of the aha experience. I have just encountered my Rosetta Stone concerning the writing. If reading is my way to understand and to master the world, writing is the way to change this world, to make sense of this world, to give another sense to this world. The pen has the power to bring things into life. That was that was my first-hand experience. That was my first, how I figure out the power of writing. And I kept this habit of writing things and telling paper and using the pen to pour my soul into paper and to engage in conversation with my grandma, with the world, to talk about my dream, to talk about my plans. That was my way to live to create another world of me, to make me escape from the bleak reality of my actual world and to create a sense of my work. That was the power of writing. So if you ask me why write, I write to give sense of, to help every broken heart, every confused teenager, every wounded person to find the meaning, to change the world. I remember that the contemporary writer John Green once said that we write to make people see the fire in the darkness. And I can see that we write, I can't agree more. We write to make people see the fire into darkness. We write on the behalf of all those people who need someone to bring their voice into light, to make them heard. Heard. It means that make them able to be heard by people. And I write for the broken-hearted people, the fused people, the wounded people, the ignorant people, the alone, the lonely people, all those people who need insight, information, company, consolation, love, only to believe in themselves. This is why I write.
Okay, this brings something very interesting. Do you consider yourself as as a lonely person? Because back to Socrates, in the Socratic world, he says that the birth of literature was only a symptom of the solitude and the loneliness that people actually experience, that sort of pushes them to the periphery and start writing. Do you think of yourself as a broken person who needs to find consolation within writing?
I can see that everyone is somehow broken somewhere in his life. And I don't believe in people writing out of passion. I don't believe in passion. I believe in necessity. When you write out of an inner drive that makes you bleed and pour your blood and pour your soul into paper, it's not about passion. It's not about profession. Writing cannot be American issue. It's not about selling ideas. It's about sharing. It's about living another life. This is so yes, somehow writing is another kind of changing our world. So yeah, to be broken, to feel a kind of despair, to feel a kind of the great source of inspiration is pain, because it's the basic human experience. So, this is what gives to writing its idiosyncratic touch, its authenticity. It's not. You can consult Pushkin, you can consult Dostoevsky, you can think of every great writer is someone who has an issue, who has a personal experience, who has a personal challenge, a personal legend to pursue. It's not about writing of passion, writing out of fame seeking. Those are just small issues that would make small writers. Okay, I'm talking about the deepest, the core nature of writing. That about people who write timeless things. It's not about writing blogs or writing posts or writing ephemeral things. Okay, so this is why I write, and this is what I want. Now I've written the first book. I have done all the imaginative errors a beginner can do. My second book was a little bit improvement compared to the first one, but I'm still learning. I'm still in the process of trial and error, learning, trying to discover myself and to discover what I can add to people through writing. Because if there in any form of magic I still believe in, it's the magic of words. So I try my way to be this wizard. This wizard. Okay. We have all dreamed of being the Gandalf, the Merlin, this wizard, this powerful wizard. Now, only the power of words can give us this ability to change the world, to change the mind of people. Okay, now you asked me about advices. What makes good writer? I'm a little bit embarrassed to be in such posture of giving advice, given my career, but I can share with you some insights, some good practice about being a good writer. It's 7 points. The first is read. Good writers are basically good readers. So you should, it's like being a good musician. Good musician, it's basically being a good listener. You should listen to good music to be able to come up with good music. So you should read. And when I talk about reading, it's not about reading. Google is a good fact-checking tool, but it's not serious reading. When I talk about reading, I talk about the classics. Don't strain yourself within the contemporary writings. It's putting your mind inside a small box of the paradigm of your time. Enlarge your perspective. Read books from any perspective, from any era. Read the classics, the timeless contribution from Socrates, from Plato, from Dostoevsky, and the like. Okay, so don't waste your time reading social media posts. Read books. Only books have the timeless power of changing your mind. Okay, it's not about reading social media and wasting your time trying to scroll your wall on Facebook or on any other social media platform trying to get knowledge. Knowledge and real culture, real insight cannot come from this outlet. The second is look. It means observe. Open your eyes. Open up your eyes, because you know what? I don't care about this typology of literature genre, being fiction, non-fiction, because I believe in one thing. The best writing is the writing that basically features the human nature, regardless of the literature genre. It's all about human nature. And scientific writing has nothing to do with boredom. Boredom is just boredom. You can read Darwin, you can read Isaac Newton, you can read Einstein, and you're going to discover that the writing of such great figure is compelling. They write well. They make stories. Because the power of the things that makes people, that makes human is their ability to make stories. We are storytelling machines. So even science is a storytelling. Even science is just a story told in a very structured way, but it's basically a story. So don't lose your ability to tell good stories and the reason of writing serious and scientific stuff. Okay? So look, open your eyes to human experience, because you need to be a keen observer of human nature to come up with insight, with inspiration. The third insight, the third advice I would share with you is live. You know, the timeless advice of the writer Benjamin Franklin. He said, either you write something worth reading, or you go do something worth reading about. It's about your life. You cannot come up with good writings, with good ideas, if you keep recycling the ideas of others. If you keep getting your raw materials from books, you should live. You should enrich your perspective. The more you have a rich life, the more you have a rich experience, a rich inner experience, emotionally, cognitively, and the like, the more you can come up with new and authentic stuff. Okay, live. It's about living.
Interesting, because we all think that writers are isolated animals. They have the cocoons and they get enclosed within it and they don't get out.
Yeah, they can manage this in and out situation. They can merge themselves with crowds, with people, but they keep their observant abilities sharp. They observe what's going on around them. Then they can come up with examples, with stories, with insights, and with new ways of telling stories. This is what makes writer a writer. It's his ability to be alone with the others.
Yes.
Okay. The fourth advice is dream, dream, dream. It's about daydreaming all the time. This is what makes what gives this reputation of being a little bit introvert, but being a little bit preferring to live alone. This proclivity to solitude. We prefer to be because dreaming is a profession. It's part of your job description. When you are a writer, you should dream. You should not hinder your dream, your ability to dream. This is what you get inspiration. People often ask writer, where do you get inspiration? This is a ridiculous question because we cannot command inspiration. It comes everywhere, every time, and many forms. And you know what? Inspiration can come, especially that's my personal experience from confluence. When you do many things at a time, and this confluence, these many things come up with something completely new. That it's a process that you cannot master. Sometimes I write something, and I still think that someone has written it on my behalf, using my pen, using my head. That ideas are flowing from somewhere. That's real inspiration. Okay.
Wow.
The fifth advice is think. It's not about absorbing the knowledge of others, but it's about digesting the knowledge. My allegory, my metaphor is the bee. You can get the juice. You can get I don't know how we call it in English, the nectar from flowers, and you digest it your own way to make your own version of honey. This is the thinking process. You have your bee belly is in your head, and somehow this machinery of thinking can make you come up with using the same raw material and getting different results, and getting results different from what a layperson can produce.
Yeah.
The sixth and the more obvious advice is the following. You're gonna be surprised. Write. Just write. You know what? What makes writers is that they sit down and write. They don't have intentions, projects of writing. They sit down and write. They don't wait for inspiration. They do their job. They don't wait. They don't depend on lunatic inspiration, a kind of inspiration and vague inspiration. No, they have, the road to hell is paved with work on progress. So they just sit down and write. And they know that the actual writing is the rewriting, is the editing process. And the secret of good writing is bad writing. When you allow yourself to come up with bad writing, with second drafts, this is the first step. You're going to be disappointed many times from yourself, because when you're a writer, you are your main fan and you are your worst critique also. So you have an idea, and ideas are cheap, because when you imagine them inside your head, they look very compelling and beautiful. Once you jot them down on paper, they're hideous. They can be hideous. They don't look good. It's like a baby. No baby can be cute the first second when he came to the world. All babies are kind of freaks. So this is the same thing with ideas. So we should be patient and review your ideas. If it sounds like writing, rewrite it. So writing is a long process. It's a long process. You cannot go through it unless you are driven by some demon you cannot understand nor master. So something you cannot control. It's something coming out of you. It's beyond your own volition. That's the real right. So write. Give yourself the permission to start by bad writing. Then improve your writing, and don't think about talents. It's not up to you to judge yourself if you're talented or not. Yeah, those things, talented or not, it's a very complicated question. So don't think about talent. Just let the universe decide about you. Just write. Okay? And the seventh advice is related to your ego. Don't take yourself too much seriously. You know, no one owes you anything.
Yeah.
It's not because you put hundreds and hundreds of hours working on an idea, working on a manuscript, and preparing a draft that people should be flabbergasted and applaud and welcome your production. The world is indifferent. That's the real description. No one cares. No one cares. So don't take yourself too much seriously. So don't expect from the world to treat you with ovation and with glory. It's not about money. It's not about glory. It's not about fame. It's not about recognition. You can experience rejection many times. It's not about happiness. That's the bad news. You know, when you are a writer, and I'm talking out of first-hand experience. When you are a writer, you live constantly with guilt. Guilt for not writing enough. Guilt for not giving enough time to shape your ideas and put them on paper. So you're thinking all the time about your manuscript, with your writing projects, etc. And you know, there is a collateral damage. Is your family, your social life, your family life, and any other occupation. You start looking at other people as a threat to your writing projects. So unless you're ready to experience those sides, don't consider to be a writer. Because writing, that's the downside. That's the real ugly face, the real ugly truth of being a writer. So being a writer, and a prolific writer, it's not about writing occasionally and looking for fame or writing for close friends and relatives. No, it's about writing seriously and making a career for writing it. So prepare to live in this emotional roller coaster every time. You feel energetic, you want to write something, then block, nothing. Because you cannot push a button and get inspiration. You feel guilty for not writing, then one day when you are in a social gathering, in a family gathering, and you're completely engaged with them, you have this compelling, urgent desire to go alone, to close the door, and to start writing. Then it will appear in your face as your rejection. You reject everyone. You start feeling that you are just disturbed by the present, by everyone in the room. That's the weirdness of writing. That's the very symptom of a pregnant woman. Okay, a pregnant woman will feel a little bit at the mercy of her hormones. And writers, because they come up with babies, they have their metaphorical pregnancy cycle and symptoms and all syndromes that come with pregnancy. Okay. That's what I want to share with you. My joy would be full if someday someone among those budding writers would write in a prologue one line when he said that he has been inspired by one of my words. Who knows?
That would happen.
That would be my great satisfaction. Thank you, and I wish you a great big career of writing, inshallah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Well, this is, I believe it's a precious list of tips that we would carve on a golden board and follow wholeheartedly, inshallah. I remember when you have mentioned storytelling and the power of words and how they sort of inspire you to write because you love words. And I believe that all authors are kind of obsessed with language. And since you write with 3 languages, French, Arabic, and English, and when I was digging up the topic yesterday, I found that Nabokov, one of the most, again, the prolific writers in the world, he used to write in Russian, English, and French, and he said, and I quote, that every single language has its peculiar way to transmit certain feelings. And more recently, Elif Shafak, one of the well-known Turkish novelists, she writes in both Turkish and English, and she says that she finds expressing misery, sorrow, or bitterness in Turkish much easier than in English. But when it comes to English, she finds expressing humor, sarcasm, irony more easy, because she mentioned, and I quote, that even the word sarcasm in Turkish doesn't have an equivalent. So for you, it is the same, that every single language has its own nuances.
Deep inside, I'm wired in Arabic. So I can write anything in Arabic. My Arabic is so ingrained in my being that it can express easily all forms of. It can convey all forms of message I want to tell to people. When it comes to other languages, I should recognize that my ability to convey to say what I mean without being mean, as we say, is a little limited. And I feel somehow frustrated when I want to express things metaphorically, poetically, using some idiomatic expressions, because this is how I think. This is how I see the world. I see it in a poetic fashion. So I feel a little bit limited by language. That frustrates me. I'm working on this by reading authentic language, by reading authentic English and authentic French, and by practicing neural listening. Even if I still believe that my initial wiring is in Arabic, and that what I should do is to recognize my limits as a foreign language writer, and don't dare to into fields that I cannot express correctly, and I can ruin my intention to write well. Okay, that it's about recognizing my limits, and this is my advice. It's not, you're not to write well. Yes, to be an expert in grammar, to be a man of words, it's basic, but it doesn't need a high level of language mastery. What does it need is authenticity, is simplicity, is knowing your limits and trying to be authentic, right as you are.
Yeah, very great advice. Yeah, I understand. Well, I think that we've spoken about language, about words, about storytelling, and how they can impact actually a writer and how they can inspire him or her to write. But what about silence? Do you find consolation and inspiration in silence? Does silence mean something to you in the process of writing, in your process of writing?
You know what? I'm basically a daydreamer. So I prefer to keep silent. I prefer to be alone. During most of my daily routine is made of my moment of loneliness, manageable and scheduled loneliness. Yeah. And during this loneliness, I just keep browsing my Google window, wondering, looking for something. And deep inside, I try to think. I'm living in my own world, silently, of course. So yes, I believe in the power of silence. That silence, outward silence, doesn't mean that things are not noisy inside. So this seemingly silent attitude, it hides a noise, a lot of noisy voices talking all together inside me. And when it comes to me to listen to one of those voices, I can come up with an interesting idea.
Yeah. Great. Before starting this meeting, I had a quick chit chat with you, and you told me that courage is one of the characteristics of being a good writer. And I wonder whether we as Moroccans and everyone here in this country who wants to be a writer is an owner of this gift of being brave, because as a wonder democracy, I believe this is not a politicized question, but democracy is having a ballot box and having the ability to vote and choose the one who will represent you. But as a wonder democracy, do we actually can be characterized as brave writers who can talk about everything, anything, and broach any topic we want to? Do you as a writer have this freedom, total freedom, to broach any topic without feeling constrained and restricted in the matter?
You know what? Since I don't feel very concerned about this question, because since I have chosen to work and to evolve within some fields related to human nature, related to human development and human flourishing. So somehow I'm working in a clear and secure area. I don't touch the sensitive topics to feel somehow constrained and entitled to think about such consideration. But I think that the form of courage that needs to be considered by writers is intellectual courage. Is the ability to think critically about ideas, is the ability to argue about ideas, is the ability to help people to think twice about issues, to examine issues from different perspectives, to escape these cognitive biases. Because within a world when people are constantly exposed to social media biases, social media manipulation, our work, our endeavor as writers is to enlighten people about this and to have this courage sometimes to go against the crowd and to tell them that it's not what we think. This is how we should think, and you can risk rejection, you can risk blame, you can risk a lot of forms of downsides. This is the form of courage I'm encouraging the young writers to take.
Yeah. Okay, great. Moving very fast to another question. Since you are a strong believer and upholder of transdisciplinarity, how do you think that these various dialogues that a writer can have with multiple disciplines can sort of shape his style of writing and the topics that he may be engrossed and interested with?
I think transdisciplinarity is the basic nature of things. Boundaries between disciplines are just an artificial things that comes with modernity. So now great minds has think about Newton, think about Darwin, think about Freud, think about to cite by a few. Those great minds don't believe on disciplinarity, don't believe on the walls between disciplines and walls between fields of knowledge. So now with complex thinking, now with this postmodern era, we are going back to transdisciplinarity and realizing that the evolved form and the best form of thinking is this networked form of thinking, when ideas are flowing freely from every corner and making this this authentic source, this authentic final product. Okay, so transdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity is just the basic nature of knowledge.
Yeah, and even as a writer of nonfiction, I believe, do you think that sort of throwing yourself and jumping into territories like art, like music, like, I don't know, paintings. How can these kind of terrains and areas influence your sort of rigid writing? Because you're writing about topics that they are somehow technical, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, I wish I could play music. I wish, you know, I wish that's one of the things I'm just living my inner grieving process about. Having long hair and playing music. Two things I'm just brushing out of my universe of possibility. No, you know, words are the basic form of doing any form of art. Words. I believe on words. So my way to sing is writing. My way to dance is writing. My way to play music is writing. My way to do sculpture. I was saying that a writer is a kind of multitasking artist.
Yeah. And I believe that also transdisciplinarity in your work, especially the human flourishing, how does it sort of impacted also not only the writing parts, but also the speaking parts? Do you think that you've mentioned before that good writers are not good speakers, but do you think that also just throwing yourself into the experience of speaking and opening up to people does influence inwardly your ability to write better and connect better to the characters you write about or to the topics you write about?
Yes, I found it a good question because I've not thought about this before. But you know what? I feel that I have a divide. I feel like having a divided self. You know, I feel like I have two personalities, the writer and the speaker. And they don't get along together, actually. When I write, I stick to some rules. I try to be sarcastic. I try to be a little bit pedantic sometimes. I try to tell stories, to be artistic, etc. When I speak, I'm rather in another posture. Trying to be as funny as possible, trying to speak about simple things, not going deeply on ideas, etc. So I have two personalities, and I feel lately that I'm going toward a kind of coherence. I'm getting some inner consistency between what I advocate as a speaker and what I'm talking about as a writer. And this is the virtue of human flourishing intellectual project. You know, I don't have the upper hand of my intellectual project. I feel it emerging inside me. So it's out of repetitive conferences, it's out of message I've been advocating during all these years. It's out of things I've been writing unconsciously that I came up with a kind of pattern that gives sense to all my thinking, my intellectual projects. And this pattern is getting more and more clear, and I'm shaping it more and more, and getting it more and more palpable.
Yes.
Palpable, and this is the virtue of human flourishing project. Okay, this is what I advocate to young writers.
Yes.
Don't write. Don't think about topics. Don't reason by topics. You should rather reason by intellectual endeavor. Something that gives coherence, something that can give this congruence, inner congruence to your readings, to your observance, to all your intellectual endeavor or intellectual investment can be put in a very productive way if you think in terms of intellectual projects.
Yes.
Okay, it's not a thing you can decide from the onset, from the beginning, but it's a thing that you should work for to deserve it at a given time. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, one last question, and then we'll move to the audience's question. The role of research in writing. I believe that all writers, they pass through a research period, which is a kind of the linchpin, the fulcrum of the work, and they find until they finally, eventually get to write. So do you think research is an important component, and how do you have a very consistent process of research before starting, kicking off the writing?
Now you're touching a very very itchy spot in the research world, because research is good, but once you start researching, start digging for something, you can fall in the rabbit hole of books, and then go into other books, and so on and so on, and it can be a very painful and unproductive process. Now, my personal recipe is that I start by thinking about, start by putting on paper what I think, the gist of my thinking, what the core message.
Yeah.
Then I start reading about it and looking at the author have talked about, have said something about it, if they agree with me or not, if my ideas are just outdated or just redundant or just false, and something like that. And out of this process of throwing my ideas, throwing my gullibility, I would say, into to the wall of books and all readings, I came to shape my own version of things. This is how I use former research, I use former books in order to come up with my own production. Okay, yes. It's not about doing research passively. I abhor the idea of making a plan, making a kind of skeleton of your book, and trying to look for books that related to every part of your books, and trying to make a kind of research very specific and telling people what we have found. No, it's not about this. This is not my way, at least. Yes. My way is begin with the end in mind. What do you want to tell people in terms of final answer? Then try to put your initial idea, throw it into the arena. Let it defend itself. Let it throw it to the arena. Then look at it. It evolves thanks to the process of critical thinking, going back and forth, revising your postulate, and so on, until you come up with a kind of final point.
Yeah. Very understandable. Well, I will ask the audiences to open their mics or just write the questions on chat, and then we'll go into answer. I'm gonna be like following this. Everyone who's got an answer, please, or a question, please just throw it there.
Now I'm discovering a question. Bonsoir, monsieur. Pouvez-vous discuter en français, s'il vous plaît? What about writing in different languages? En français, it's up to Mr. Dehbi. I would be very comfortable with French, but as he is the master of this encounter, he made me speak in English against my will.
No, I suck in French. I didn't want to suck in front of everybody, so that's a relief arena for me.
What advice can you give to people who struggle with translating their ideas to words? That's a nice question. this is a baby problematic. This is a baby issue. You know, when we were young babies, we have ideas, and we didn't have enough words to convey our ideas, to tell our messages. So what we have, what we have done, and or what we were doing when we were babies, is listening. No, we're listening. We listen to others. We try to create, to figure out the link, the relationship between the experience, the thing, the fact, and the world. This is how we get through this basic hurdle of acquiring language. So acquiring words to describe experience, inner experience, is a basic human ability. We are wired. We come to the world with all the abilities to acquire knowledge, to acquire language. So now, if you feel that your repository of words isn't enough to make you put all your feelings into paper, the recipe is simple. Read, listen, and read. Get more knowledge, get more words from the other. Mimic the others. It's the timeless recipe. Can we say that censorship? Yes, basically censorship. How? Have you ever hit writer's block? I don't prefer talking about writer's block, because writer's block is just part of the writing cycle. You know, you have literally some bad days when you have the time, you have the intention, but nothing can come up, because you cannot push a button and get inspiration. This is what some writers and some beginners call writer's block, but I consider it as part of the writing cycle. Even if you feel that you're on a block, you're on a stalemate, your unconscious mind are processing something that you don't know. Just stick there. Be patient. Write again. Come again. If there is a block today, go for a walk and come again, and wait for the flow to appear again. Do it many times, and you're gonna discover that all your patience can be would pay, and it will, and the prize will be a moment of pure flow, when you are gonna feel that ideas are just coming from nowhere and flowing into your mind, and then to your fingers, and you come up with a beautiful text. This is what makes the difference between a professional and just a passionate writer. A passionate writer waits for creativity, waits for moments of inspiration. Those seldom moments which are very random, very random. Professionals know that writer block are just part of the deal. Okay, censorship, yes, and by censorship I mean inner censorship. When you censor yourself, when you censor yourself out of the fear of being judged by others. When you write in Arabic, we say "Man ألف استهدف." He puts himself as a target to be shot. It's simple. You write for others, and others will judge you. That's the basic reality of writing world. So if you censor yourself from the beginning, from the onset, out of fear of being judged by others, you have lost. Okay? So don't censor yourself. This is what bothers me more. Now, external censorship, it's another issue. How can I become better writer? Because I don't know to use words. I have the idea, but I found how to put into words. Baby method, baby recipe. So please, do you think there is a specific age to write a book considering the experience, skills, or okay? no specific book, no specific age. Your first book will suck. Your second, probably. Your third, you're gonna feel some improvements, and you're gonna wait. That's it. So there is no ideal age for starting a writing project. Thank you, my alter ego, Mr. Reda Talb. You have been always here to fan my flame. Is it a donation writing? I can't tell you. No one can tell you. It's not the donation, a gift, huh? I suppose you feel. You mean, is it a gift? Something we come with? We get it from God directly. It's not something we can acquire. Yes, somehow, yes. But who he is entitled to judge? Okay, who's entitled to judge? So unless you start writing and doing real investments in terms of time and energy and research and learning process and etc., you cannot know if you're gifted or not. So don't bother yourself with such question. If you feel the desire, if you feel this burning needs inside you, that's the good sign. The rest, it's not your concern.
I think that's all we've got, right? Okay, another question that just popped up in my mind. I know that I started to become annoying, but I want to know about pale imitations, that every writer fall into that rabbit hole when they start to imitate their favorite writers. Did you, when you were coming of age, started to imitate your favorite writers who inspired you to write?
Yeah. I think that it's part of natural human growth. We start by imitating others. You know, when I write in Arabic, I feel that I'm imitating Nabil Farouk and Rifat and Rifat Ismail. His main hero. So I'm confusing the hero with the author. So I feel somehow that I'm imitating them. I feel their soul inside my way of being sarcastic, on telling some jokes, etc. Then I feel all the souls of Tahsin, Rifat Tahtawi, Rafi'i, etc. All those great figures. They are just in me. No, all the question is how to imitate others and be yourself. Recognize that you're just a product in human, within a human evolution. So you're not just something that pop up out of nowhere. Okay, so recognize that you are imitating that, but don't lose your soul and your authenticity within this imitation game.
Yeah. Do you reconsider yourself a writer who is an engineer? You know, there's an engineering sort of process of writing, which is like everything is put precisely into the paper, and there's a structure and a plot that you should follow wholeheartedly and with fidelity, or you're the kind that follows their instincts more when they're writing.
You know, I'm by nature a chaotic follower. So I do things within chaos. So I start jotting down ideas and letting them evolve naturally and waiting for the final product. And you know what? It happens for me to get surprised by the final product. It means that when I start the book, I have no idea about how the final product would look like. So I abhor certainty. If I feel that things are gonna be run in a sequential way, when everything should be put in the right way with a very precise pattern, that makes me a little bit annoyed, and nothing can titillate my jaded palate. So I need novelty, I need excitement, I need this mixture between anxiety and expectations. So this is how I operate.
Okay. On this note, I think we will finish our meeting tonight. We were very honored to have you, Mr. Elwani. Thank you so much for this precious tips that you enlightened us with. It was such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me. Thank you. Next time, inshallah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.